Hello and welcome to 5-inch Floppy on GameArena.com.au. I'm Junglist, and if the wise and mighty internet is to be believed, Japan is going through a bit of a crisis in game development. Some studios are certainly having a hard time coming to terms with the tastes of the West, but one studio is, for better or worse, sticking true to its roots, and that is Team Ninja. Their last game, Ninja Gaiden 3, didn't do so well, so their new flagship fighting game, Dead or Alive 5, kind of needs to.
You and your associates wouldn't be interested in entering a tournament, would you?
Tournament?
Just like every fighting game, there's some tournament that's gathered fighters from all over the globe with interesting fighting styles, from wrestling to ninjutsu to drunken style to Jeet Kune Do. And all of it woven together with a story mode that seems like it was written by a 10-year-old.
Kasumi, this concerns our whole clan. You shouldn't bear this burden alone.
No, brother. This is my fight, and no one else's!
But if you've played any Dead or Alive, you'll easily grasp this one. The series isn't known for sweeping improvements or innovations other than graphics. In fact, it's clear that Team Ninja are less concerned with features than assets.
I need to find her, and put an end to this.
I'm sorry, what were you saying? Rumors abounded that Team Ninja would tone down the screen space required for such huge tracts of land, but no such thing has occurred. Front-heavy female fighters have their fighting skills rated on a scale that begins with double D. And everywhere you turn, there are independently moving fleshy lava lamps attached to caricatures of the female form. Every second a girl is on screen in this game is an embarrassment. We'd usually rather focus on gameplay, not this controversy stuff over bodily proportions. It's all a distraction, a storm in a D cup. We're actually the type of players that usually pick a girl in an MMO, because if we're gonna stare at someone's ass for hours on end, it might as well be a girl's. But this is actually making us uncomfortable. Fighters will now sweat throughout a fight, making their clothes more transparent. And you can position a camera now around a fighter wherever you want to take a nice snapshot. Because nothing defends the integrity of what you're doing to whoever else is in the room like immortalizing a nice upskirt to enjoy later. Come on, guys. All you need's a handful. It's a shame because deep down, Dead or Alive has an interesting combat system. But if it were to look down to find it, all it would see is its own massive tits. The more functional aspect of what sets Dead or Alive apart is the ability to counter. Pressing back and the block button just before an attack counters their move for extra damage. With high, mid, and low attacks, counters need to be matched to the attacks. High counter, mid counter, and low counter. Counters serve as good momentum shifters in a fight, and in Dead or Alive 5, the window to perform a counter has been reduced, requiring quicker reaction speeds. But when you become familiar with the combos enemies are capable of, it becomes easier. Take this combo for example. You know that if this character does that amount of hits, he only has one option for his next attack: easy counter. When people become that familiar with each other's and the character's combos, it actually becomes beneficial to stop a combo halfway through and transition. And in that, Dead or Alive 5 is very different to other fighting games. Normally a rock, paper, scissors for a fighting game looks like this, with blocks beating attacks, holds beating blocks, and attacks beating holds. Dead or Alive's counters fill the same role as blocks, making this a kind of rock, paper, scissors. So what's the difference between the rocks? Well, a normal block will block any high or mid attack, whereas a crouching block will block low attacks. There are two zones to worry about. Counters have high, mid, and low inputs, meaning 3 zones to worry about. So counters are the more risky of the two rocks. Making it even more difficult to counter, some of the styles in Dead or Alive are intentionally hard to read, such as the tricky attacks of Drunken Style, or the fast feints of the ninjas that bait early counters. Some of these moves are so dazzling it's hard to tell if they're high, mid, or low, so Team Ninja have included a mode that tells you where attacks were directed. Or even something simple like the new entrant Rig, whose taekwondo is, to use a nice word, inspired by Tekken's Hwarang. Rig isn't very fast and doesn't have much in the way of short range, but he'll often raise his leg in a kind of ready position. With so little room to telegraph, it's very hard to tell whether he'll go up, mid, or low. The only other new entrant is Mila, and wisely riding the wave of the MMA trend, Mila employs a mix of straightforward, practical strikes and competent ground game. These new characters fit into the existing system very well, but other than that, there's not much new in Dead or Alive 5. There's a new move that you can do to sort of extend the length of combos, but that's about the only gameplay change. And a big deal is being made of being able to knock people into other areas of a stage, but you could actually do that in previous versions. There is some functionality for organizing online tournaments, and that's cool, but as for new stuff, DOA 5 is a little weak. And that brings us to Endgame. If you can somehow bend light to see around Dead or Alive 5's massive tits, then you'll actually find a pretty good combat system. The trouble is, it's largely the same combat system. So there's two ways to look at this. Is it a good game? Undoubtedly yes. Is it a notable improvement on the last game? Undoubtedly no. With only 2 new characters, you could actually buy the last one for much cheaper and get much the same experience, which means if stumped, you'll probably be swayed by how much you care about graphics. With the triumphs of the last Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Capcom, and Mortal Kombat, the fighting genre experienced something of a golden age for which Dead or Alive brings too little too late. Those successful fighters all introduced enough new systems to keep from being a simple graphical improvement. So while Dead or Alive 5 is a good game, it raises questions about Team Ninja's priorities for the future. The fighting genre now is innovate or bust, and Team Ninja have emphatically embraced the bust.